What's up, y'all? We all been in the same situation. We have like our beautiful song we just did, and our mix just doesn't cut it. Today I have 5 tips for you to elevate your mixing game. These are quick tips I actually do in almost every production I do, so I would just want to share it with you guys. Tip number 1, make a mono sound source stereo. The idea behind this tip is to actually take information away from the center and put it on your stereo soundscape.
So this is a project called Solo. It's one of my personal songs. You can find it under Kevin Andre Solo if you're interested in listening to the whole song. It's on YouTube and everywhere, but that's beside the point. There is one trick in here that I used to fill out our space of our mix. It's super easy trick, but you should use that one too because it's super helpful for a lot of things. So let's listen to a little bit of the song so you get an idea what we're working with.
Hey, are you solo? I hate being solo. I'm taking it so all day, every day.
I freaking love this song. This is such a heartfelt song for me. I wrote that in the pandemic. That's why it's called Solo. So I wanted some kind of shaker and like to fill out the space. And I had this tambourine sample and I was like, okay, cool. But it's going to sound so weird because you're just going to have like a mono sample, and it's going to be either in the middle somewhere and like clogging up everything because you want to hear the vocals and not the shaker in your face. So I was like, okay, let's pan it to the side, but it's going to be like a super off balance, like on the left or right. I have 2 tambourines, but it's exactly the same sample. I took tambourine here and I duplicated it. The thing is, like, if you do that without changing the sample at all, it's going to be in the middle as well. It's going to be centered. Let me show you. I panned it all the way to the left. And I'm going to add the same one. I just duplicated it and panned it all the way to the right. And like, I want like this this effect that it's not in the middle, but it's coming from left and right. And you're going to hear it's not going to come from left and right. It's right in the center. So what we need to do, we have to trick our ear that we have 2 different sound sources, not just one coming like from left and right, because that adds up to center. So what I did is I'm going to take one of the tambourines and I'm going to add a delay of 18 milliseconds, roughly. It could be 15, could be, sometimes depends on the song, 20 or even more. But that tricks our ears that we have 2 different sound sources, even though it's the same sample. Magic, honestly. Now listen to this. It's exactly the same sample with 18 milliseconds delay. Boom. There you have it. Now it's not in your face. It's not centered. It's not the center of attention because we don't need it to be. So everything else is more important than a freaking tambourine.
Hey, are you solo? I hate being solo. I'm taking it so.
Room in the middle and the center, and left and right, we have our shakers.
Tip number 2, clean up your low end. Why should we do that? Well, we have a lot of information on low end. It's like a kick drum, it's a bass drum, sometimes like a sub bass and stuff like that. And you don't have a lot of space. And it's gonna sound super muddy, and you want everything to be defined and clear. And that's why you have to clean up your low end.
Alright everyone, welcome to a project I did a while ago for a German rapper called KOD. This song is called Wieder Allein, which means Wieder allein. Wieder allein, which means I'm alone again. So as we said before, it's super important to keep the low end super clean. So you can do it in different ways. Here are a couple of tricks. First off, get your kick and bass in order so they know exactly where they are in your mix. So let's get in and let me demonstrate it for you. Here we have our kick drum, which is right here. And so we have here our bass. So you guys get the idea. And here's the secret sauce, guys. It's the side chain compressor. Basically, when the kick drum comes in, we have the compressor which is being triggered. So every time you see the kick drum hit, you're going to see a gain reduction in the bass. It's right here. It's super subtle, but that will definitely help in your mix to clean it up in the low end. Nice. You want it crisp and really hard hitting for the kick and also the bass. Super important since both are super low in the frequency. Like kick drum is around, lower part is around 50 hertz, and the 808 bass is super low as well. So they will definitely interfere. So one thing to circumvent that, EQ And you can see I have like a boost on 50 where I want the kick drum to be, and I'm gonna take out a little bit higher, around I would say 80 hertz, where the bass frequency, the main frequency of the bass is. So that clears up a little bit. Let's go to the bass and see what I have there, and it's exactly the opposite. So I took out from the 50 hertz and boosted it a little bit higher, so they know exactly where they're gonna sit in the mix. And tip number 3 for low end, we all love using reverb, but reverb can also be kind of tricky to work with in the low end. So what I suggest, for instance, if you have your drums and you want to put a little bit of depth to your mix, put reverb on it, but don't put it on the kick drum, because that can mud up your low end very much. So what I did for my drums right here, I got reverb on almost everything except for the kick drum. Let's listen to that. So these are all the instruments. Let's take them out one by one. This is our kick drum. No reverb whatsoever. That is also because you want it to be more direct. For this kind of music, for hip hop, if you have reverb on your low end, it's going to sound a little bit like weird, but you want it in your face. Know what I mean? So that's why I don't put reverb on my low end. That's a very good trick. Everything else, like snare, hi-hats, probably. Yes. You can see it adds depth if you put reverb on that, and it's definitely way easier to handle than if you put it on the low end.
Tip number 3, layer your samples. Layering samples is not a secret, but not a lot of people do it because they're lazy maybe, just like me. But believe me, it helps a lot in your mix and also makes your whole arrangement so much more interesting. Sometimes your sample pack has like a snare, for instance, and the snare is nice and it's fine, but it's not cutting through the mix and you need like something snappy. So you have to like add something to it to make the snare way more interesting.
So in this instance, I have my drums right here, and I was like, okay, let's do a snare. And if I play this song right now, you're gonna hear, or gonna see, we have 3 different samples for the snare. Right here. Let's listen to our first sample right here, which is snare absent 8. All right. So it has like a little bit of oomph. But if I wanted to use this one alone, it doesn't have enough high end that it cuts through the mix. Listen to the second one in addition. All right. Here we have like the most of the snare. So it's like a regular, I would say like an urban kind of snare, but nothing too special, to be honest, like, because something is missing. And I was like, I needed to cut through the mix. So that's why I added the third one, which is this one here. All right. Super snappy, very much high end. So let's listen to it alone, solo it out. Can you hear that? That's like that, like a whip coming through. So that's just on top of everything else. So you have like the body of the snare, and this one's just like the high and the top, plus a little bit of reverb, which is to give the whole snare a little bit of dimension. So if we listen to all 3 together, it's going to sound like this. Nice. That's a really fun trick. Like if you have samples and you start off with the demo track or something and it sounds fine, but you just want to up your game, layer samples.
Mixing tip number 4, you probably heard this one before, glue. Glue is super important for mixing. It glues together certain stems and tracks of your song. The reason behind this is to have like an equal sounding break of sound, if you want to call it that. For instance, your drums, you have multiple tracks. You have a kick drum, a snare, hi-hat, and so forth. If you glue it together, it's going to sound like one compact pre-mixed set you can use.
Generally speaking, you want certain instrument groups to be glued. Obviously, drums in total, if you mix, you have like a snare, you have a kick drum, you have hi-hat, like different stems, but all of these need to sound coherent. And a glue can have different forms. It could be reverb. The most common one is a compressor. So we use a compressor to glue certain parts together. By doing that, it's just a very subtle activation, but that activation actually helps for it to sound okay. The snare is not too loud and the kick drum is like coming in weirdly. No, it's just like it sounds like pretty balanced out. That helps a lot. It's subtle differences. This is a project I produced last year for a very good friend of mine, Olga Dudkova. She's coming out with her new album, and this song is really amazing. It's actually a jazz standard, but we did our own twist to it, and it's like more soul, jazz, R&B-ish. It's a really cool song.
Heartache, you unglued me side. Good morning, heartache. Thought we said goodbye last night.
So what I use an SSL compressor. This one is from Waves. What I did, I activated a little bit of compressor to glue all of the drums together so they sound coherent. So let's see how that sounds. Let me bypass it for a sec. So it's a very subtle effect, but if you have a lot of tracks in your project, that definitely adds up. That helps out to like also keep balances in check. So you know, okay, the drums, they're like one pack and you can like use it and it's more or less like very, very glued together and sounds coherent. So for instance, like in this project, I also have like the main piano, but I also have to accompany it organ and Rhodes in the background, also like a synth pad. That is something I definitely glued together so the pads feel like one instrument instead of like two different ones. That was the idea behind it. The main instrument can breathe a little bit more, but these are just like accompanying it in the background. So I glued it together, did like a compressor. They sound a little bit more coherent. Glue is super important.
And finally, mixing tip number 5, don't be afraid to copy already existing mixes. Music or art in general actually is something you can learn by copying people. That is how we learn. That is just a natural thing. The goal for us is to copy, but also give our own twist to it. By doing that, we create something completely new. There are very few artists, if it's like a painting or music, that actually create something very new. Because even a Mozart, like he learned from his teachers. So he has a lot of influence from people he studied with and from. So it's absolutely normal to listen to a mix you already like, or a master for that sense, and emulate what they're doing. So this was always like one of my biggest fears. Like I always tried to do something new, and if I didn't do anything new, then it's not worth it. But that is absolutely not true. So it's absolutely common to copy certain existing things because it's a lot of inspiration and motivation to go on and create something that you wouldn't be able to create. So I assure you, I'm in the same boat, but you can definitely take inspiration from mixes you like and say, okay, this one has a lot of energy. I want to emulate this. How can I do this? So definitely take notes from those and incorporate it in your own music. Alright guys, as we're closing out this video, I just want to let you know these are like tips I use for myself a lot. So I just wanted to share this with you guys. There's so many more tips out there. So I definitely probably will do one of these videos again. Definitely let me know if you use one of these tricks or if I helped you at all. And if you got any kind of value out of this video, please consider liking and subscribing. This would help out a lot. Thank you so much for doing this. And I'll see you in the next video. Alright, peace.